The massive ship floated in the darkness of space like a sleeping giant. The Xyrillian flagship Dominion's edge stretched 15 kilometers from nose to tail, its dark metal hull covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Inside the command center, Fleet Admiral Vextar Krell stood before a wall of glowing screens, his 6 arms crossed behind his back. His yellow eyes studied the star maps that showed the ever-growing borders of the Xyrillian Empire. For 300 years, his people had conquered world after world. Every species they met either surrendered quickly or died fighting. There was no third option. The galaxy belonged to the strong, and the Xyrillians were the strongest of all. A communication officer turned toward the Admiral. "Sir, we have a message from Patrol Fleet 7. They report contact with a new species." Krell's mandibles clicked with interest. "Show me." The main screen flickered and displayed the image of Captain Thoximal, commander of a small patrol group. The younger Xyrillian looked nervous as he spoke. "Admiral, we encountered a vessel from an unknown species near the outer rim. They call themselves humans from a system called Sol. The ship is small, perhaps 200 meters long. Primitive fusion drive, basic hull design. Nothing impressive." "Did they surrender?" Krell asked. "No, sir. Their captain refused our standard demands. He was polite about it, but firm. He said they would not submit to our authority." Krell's eyes narrowed. In 3 centuries, no species had ever refused their first demand for surrender. Most were so terrified by Xyrillian ships that they gave up immediately. "What did you tell them?" "I informed them that resistance was futile and that they would be conquered whether they agreed or not. The human captain simply said they would defend themselves if attacked." Then he ended the communication. The Admiral studied the tactical display showing the human ship. It looked like something his people might have built 500 years ago. The weapons were basic energy cannons. The shields were simple electromagnetic barriers. The ship moved slowly compared to modern Xyrillian vessels. "One ship?" Krell asked. "Yes, sir. Our scans show it carries about 50 crew members. They appear to be a carbon-based species, similar to the Altarians we conquered last year." Krell turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare subjugation fleet, 12 for immediate deployment. 50 heavy cruisers should be more than enough to handle these humans." "Sir, isn't that excessive for one primitive ship?" The Admiral's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "We make examples, not exceptions. Every species in the galaxy must learn that refusing the Xyrillian Empire brings swift punishment. Send the fleet to their home system. Destroy any resistance and prepare their worlds for occupation." Far across space, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the human exploration vessel Aurora. The ship was indeed small by galactic standards, but it represented the best of human engineering. Morrison was a tall man with graying hair and steady blue eyes. He had spent 20 years exploring the unknown regions of space, but this was his first contact with a truly alien intelligence. "Sir, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Kate Phillips. "Put it through to my ready room," Morrison said. He walked to the small office behind the bridge and activated the quantum communication system. Admiral Lisa Carter's image appeared on the screen. She was a stern woman with short black hair and sharp green eyes. Behind her, Morrison could see the busy command center of Earth's Deep Space Defense Headquarters. "Jake, I've read your report about the Xyrillians. How do you assess the situation?" Morrison leaned back in his chair. "They're clearly aggressive, Admiral. Their first response was to demand our complete surrender. When I refused, they threatened conquest. Their ships are large and heavily armed, but their technology seems conventional. Nothing we haven't seen before in our simulations." "Conventional is good," Carter said with a slight smile. "General Brooks wants to know if you think they'll actually attack." "Without question. The captain I spoke with seemed genuinely surprised that we refused to surrender. I think they're used to intimidating other species into submission without a fight." "How long until they reach Earth?" "Based on their ship movements, I'd estimate 3 weeks if they use standard faster-than-light travel." Carter nodded. "That gives us time to prepare. Jake, I want you to return to Earth immediately. Don't engage any Xyrillian forces you encounter. We need you to brief our defense commanders in person." Understood, Admiral. Should I be worried about Earth's safety? For the first time, Carter's smile became genuinely amused. Jake, you've been away from home for 2 years. You might be surprised by what we've accomplished while you were exploring. The communication ended, leaving Morrison puzzled by the Admiral's confidence. He knew Earth had been developing new defensive technologies, but the Xerillians commanded an entire galactic empire. How could Earth possibly stand against such power? Back on the Xerillian flagship, Admiral Krell reviewed intelligence reports about the human home system. Sol contained one inhabited world with a population of 8 billion humans. They had colonized several other planets in their system, but their space fleet was small. Perhaps 30 ships total, none larger than the vessel they had encountered. Pathetic, Krell muttered. They cannot even defend a single star system properly. His intelligence officer approached. Sir, there are some unusual energy readings from the human industrial facilities. Our sensors cannot identify the technology being used. Unusual how? The signatures don't match any known propulsion or weapon systems in our database. The readings suggest they're working with some form of exotic matter, but that should be impossible for a species at their development level. Krell dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. Probably just poor sensor calibration. No species develops advanced physics without first conquering their neighbors. These humans haven't even left their home system properly. Whatever they're building, it cannot be a threat to the Empire. The Admiral turned back to his star charts, already planning the integration of human territory into the Empire. He had no idea that humanity had spent the last century developing technology based on principles that the rest of the galaxy hadn't even discovered yet. While other species focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, human scientists had been exploring the deepest mysteries of reality itself. In 3 weeks, Admiral Krell would learn that there were things in the universe far more dangerous than large ships and powerful weapons. He would discover that the greatest threat to his empire came not from conventional military might, but from a species that had learned to think differently about the nature of existence itself. Countdown to first contact had begun, and neither side truly understood what was about to happen. 3 weeks later, the Xerillian war fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space. Battle Commander Thexval stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays show 50 heavy cruisers arranged in perfect attack formation. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long and bristled with enough firepower to level a city. Sir, we have arrived at the coordinates, reported his navigation officer. Sensors show the human home system directly ahead. Thexval studied the readouts with satisfaction. This would be the easiest conquest in Xerillian history. The humans had only managed to assemble 30 ships to defend their entire system, and most of those were barely larger than shuttlecraft by Xerillian standards. Open a channel to all ships, he ordered. Today we add another species to the Empire. Remember, we want some survivors to serve as workers. Try not to destroy everything. The Xerillian fleet began moving toward Earth at combat speed. Their sensors mapped every human vessel, every defensive platform, every military installation. What they found was almost insulting in its weakness. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her ship Liberty, watching the approaching enemy fleet through the main viewer. She was a compact woman with short brown hair and calm brown eyes that had seen combat in the asteroid belt wars. Now she commanded humanity's first line of defense against an alien invasion. 30 ships against 50, said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Pete Williams. The odds aren't great, Captain. Rodriguez smiled slightly. Pete, you're thinking like they do. Sometimes the side with fewer ships wins because they're not really the same kind of ships at all. Williams looked puzzled, but he had learned to trust his captain's judgment. Rodriguez had a reputation for pulling victory from impossible situations, though he had never understood exactly how she did it. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy commander, reported the communications officer. Put it on screen. The bridge's main display showed Battle Commander Thexval in all his intimidating alien glory. His 4 arms were spread wide, in a gesture of dominance, and his yellow eyes glowed with confidence. Human vessel, I am Battle Commander Thexval of the Xerillian Empire. You are completely outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make your entire species suffer before we destroy you. Rodriguez stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. Commander Thexeval, I am Captain Amy Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. I'm going to give you one chance to turn around and leave our space peacefully. This is your only warning. The alien commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You dare threaten us? Look at your pathetic ships. My smallest escort vessel carries more firepower than your entire fleet combined. I'm not threatening you, Commander. I'm trying to save your life and the lives of your crews. You don't understand what you're dealing with here. What I understand is that you have 30 small ships against my 50 battle cruisers. What I understand is that your species will learn what happens to those who defy the Empire. The transmission ended, leaving the Bridge of Liberty in silence. Williams shook his head in amazement. Captain, did you just try to warn them off for their own good? Yes, I did. They seem like a warrior species with their own code of honor. I respect that even if they're on the wrong side. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter watched the same exchange from the Pentagon's Deep Space Command Center. General Ryan Brooke stood beside her, both of them studying the tactical displays that showed the two fleets facing each other in space. Amy's trying to give them a way out, Carter observed. Think they'll take it? Brooks asked. Not a chance. Look at their formation, their approach vector, their communication style. This is a species that's used to winning through intimidation and overwhelming force. They can't even imagine that we might have something they don't. Good thing we do. Carter nodded. Ryan, are you sure our people are ready for this? It's one thing to run simulations and test flights. It's another thing entirely to use the technology in actual combat. Our pilots have been training for 2 years. The technology is stable, and the ships are performing beyond all expectations. The only question is whether the Xerillians will believe what they're seeing. Back in space, Commander Thexeval gave the order to attack. All ships, advance to attack. Formation. Target the largest human vessels first. Show them the price of defiance. The Xerillian fleet accelerated toward the human defensive line. Their massive ships moved with surprising grace, their hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun. Energy weapons began charging, preparing to deliver devastating salvos that would vaporize the small human ships in seconds. Captain Rodriguez watched the enemy approach with the calm expression of someone who knew a secret. All ships, this is Liberty. Execute Plan Omega on my mark. The human ships began moving into what looked like a standard defensive formation. To Xerillian sensors, they appeared to be preparing for a conventional space battle. Energy shields activated, weapons powered up, and engines went to full power. What the Xerillians couldn't detect was the subtle humming that had begun in the engineering sections of every human ship. Deep within the vessels, machines that existed, partially outside normal space-time, began their startup sequences. Technology that had taken humanity 50 years to develop was about to be tested in the crucible of war. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the command ship as her life's work prepared to change the course of galactic history. She was a small woman with gray hair and intense blue eyes, and she had spent decades unlocking the secrets of quantum dimensional manipulation. Captain Rodriguez, all ships report ready status, she said quietly. Thank you, Doctor. Pete, how long until the Xerillians reach firing range? 30 seconds, Captain. Rodriguez took a deep breath. In 30 seconds, the Xerillian Empire would learn that there were things in the universe they had never imagined. In 30 seconds, the balance of galactic power would shift forever. All ships execute Plan Omega. Let's show them what human ships can really do. The words were barely spoken when something impossible happened. The 30 human ships simply vanished from Xerillian sensors. Not destroyed, not hidden, just gone. Commander Thexeval stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Where did they go? He demanded. His sensor officer frantically worked his controls. Sir, I don't know. They were there one moment and then they just disappeared. Our sensors show nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, nothing. That's impossible. Ships don't just vanish. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Krell. The Admiral's image appeared on the main screen. his expression grim. "Commander, what is your status? Our long-range sensors show unusual readings from your position. Admiral, the human ships have disappeared. Our sensors cannot locate them anywhere in the system." Admiral Krell's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Ships do not disappear, Commander. Find them and destroy them, that is an order." The transmission ended, leaving Commander Thexaval staring at empty space where 30 human ships had been just moments before. He had no way of knowing that those ships hadn't disappeared at all. They had simply stepped outside the normal dimensions of space-time, and they were about to reappear somewhere he would never expect. Commander Thexaval stared at his empty sensor displays for exactly 10 seconds before everything changed. The silence on his bridge was broken by a sharp alarm as his tactical officer shouted in panic. "Sir, contact directly behind us. The human flagship just appeared 50 meters off our stern." Thexval spun around to see Captain Rodriguez's ship Liberty floating impossibly close to his massive cruiser. The small human vessel looked like a toy next to the 2-kilometer Xyrillian warship, but somehow it had appeared where no ship should be able to survive. "How did they get through our shields?" Thexval demanded. "Sir, they didn't go through our shields. Our sensors show they just materialized there. One moment there was empty space, the next moment there was a ship." Before Thexval could respond, his weapons officer called out in confusion. "Commander, I'm trying to target the human ship, but our weapons won't lock on. The targeting system says there's nothing there, but we can see it with our own eyes." On the Bridge of Liberty, Captain Rodriguez stood calmly beside Dr. Elena Vasquez, who was monitoring the quantum dimensional systems that made their impossible position possible. The ship existed partially outside normal spacetime, making it invisible to conventional sensors while remaining visible to human eyes. "Doctor, are we stable?" Rodriguez asked. "Perfectly stable, Captain. We're existing in 7 dimensions simultaneously. To their sensors, we're not really here. To their weapons, we're in a different layer of reality entirely." Lieutenant Commander Pete Williams looked out at the massive alien ship surrounding them. "Captain, we're inside their shield perimeter. They can't raise shields without cutting their own ship in half." Rodriguez nodded. "Open a channel to the Xyrillian commander." The main screen showed Commander Thexval's bridge, where chaos was spreading as officers tried to understand what was happening. The alien commander's yellow eyes were wide with fear and confusion. "Commander Thexval, this is Captain Rodriguez. I tried to warn you, your weapons cannot touch us, your shields cannot stop us, and your sensors cannot track us. I'm going to give you one more chance to withdraw." "Impossible," Thexval snarled. "No ship can do what you're doing. Our science says it cannot exist." "Your science is incomplete," Rodriguez replied calmly. "We've learned things about the universe that your people never discovered. Things that make your weapons and your ships obsolete." To demonstrate her point, Rodriguez gave a simple order. "Pete, disable their main weapons array. Surgical strike." Only. Williams targeted the Xyrillian ship's primary weapon batteries and fired a single precise beam. The energy passed through the alien ship's shields as if they weren't there, struck the weapon systems with perfect accuracy, and shut them down without harming a single crew member. On the Xyrillian bridge, sparks flew from control panels as their main guns went offline. The weapons officer frantically worked his controls, but nothing responded. "Sir, main weapons are completely dead. The human beam somehow bypassed our shields entirely. It's like they fired through solid matter." Thexval's mandibles clicked in terror. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. Destroy it now." Across the Xyrillian fleet, 49 heavy cruisers turned their weapons toward Liberty and opened fire. Massive plasma cannons unleashed enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The combined firepower should have turned the human ship into atomic particles. Instead, the weapons fire passed harmlessly through empty space. Liberty was no longer where the weapons were aimed. The ship had shifted slightly in the quantum dimensions, existing in the same physical location, but in a different layer of reality. "Sir, all weapons missed," reported a Xyrillian gunner. "The target ship is still there, but our shots went right through it." Meanwhile, the other 29 human ships began appearing throughout the Xyrillian fleet. Each one materialized in an impossible position, inside shield coverage, behind enemy vessels, or in locations where the laws of physics said no ship could survive. Captain Ben Foster's ship appeared directly above a Xerillian cruiser, so close that their hulls should have been touching. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, disabled the alien ship's engines with the same precision that Liberty had used on the weapons. "Sarah, how are our quantum fields holding up?" Foster asked. "Stable across all dimensional layers, Captain. The Xerillians keep trying to scan us, but their sensors only work in normal space-time. We might as well be ghosts to them." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out as human ships demonstrated capabilities that defied everything the Xerillians thought they knew about space combat. Ships appeared and disappeared at will, weapons fired through shields and armor without, causing explosions, and the humans seemed able to be in multiple places at the same time. On Xerilla Prime, Admiral Krell watched the battle through quantum communication links, his confidence crumbling with each impossible event. His tactical displays showed human ships existing in locations that should be fatal, moving in ways that violated the laws of physics, and using weapons that ignored every known defensive technology. "Get me Commander Thexval immediately," he ordered. When the communication connected, Krell saw chaos on the Xerillian bridge. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. Officers ran between stations trying to restore systems, and Commander Thexval looked like he had seen the end of the world. "Admiral, we need immediate reinforcement," Thexval said desperately. "The humans, they're not fighting like any species we've ever encountered. Their ships exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Our weapons pass right through them. They can fire through our shields as if they don't exist." "That's impossible," Krell replied, but his voice lacked conviction. The sensor data streaming back to Xerilla Prime confirmed everything Thexval was saying. Ships cannot violate the fundamental laws of physics. "Sir, I'm watching them do exactly that. My flagship is completely disabled. Half my fleet has lost weapons or engines, and we haven't managed to land a single hit on the enemy. They're toying with us." On Earth, Admiral Carter and General Brooks watched the battle unfold with quiet satisfaction. The human ships moved through the Xerillian fleet like dancers, each one demonstrating mastery over forces that the aliens couldn't even detect. "Our pilots are performing beautifully," Brooks observed. 2 years of training in quantum dimensional combat is paying off." "The Xerillians don't even understand what they're seeing," Carter replied. "To them, we're violating the basic laws of reality. They have no frame of reference for ships that exist partially outside normal space-time." Dr. Marcus Webb, humanity's chief dimensional engineer, stood beside them watching the tactical displays. "Admiral, the quantum consciousness interface is working perfectly. Our pilots' thoughts are directly controlling the dimensional shifts. The ships respond to their intentions as much as their control inputs." Back in space, Captain Rodriguez decided it was time to end the demonstration. "All ships, this is Liberty. Disable the remaining Xerillian vessels. Non-lethal force only. These are warriors following orders, not monsters." Within minutes, the entire Xerillian fleet found itself helpless. Weapons offline, engines disabled, shields down, but with every crew member unharmed. The human ships had struck with surgical precision, targeting only mechanical systems while carefully avoiding any action that might hurt the alien crews. Commander Thexval stood in his darkened bridge, surrounded by dead control panels and the smell of burned electronics. His communication still worked, and he could hear similar reports from all 50 ships in his fleet. "Admiral," he said quietly into his communicator, "request permission to withdraw immediately. We are completely outmatched. The humans don't possess ships like anything in our database. They're using technology that shouldn't be possible. We need to warn the Empire that we're facing something beyond our understanding." The words that would echo across the galaxy had been spoken. The Xerillian Empire, undefeated for 3 centuries, had encountered something that made their mighty fleets look like primitive toys. And the humans had demonstrated their superiority without killing a single enemy. The age of conventional space warfare was over, and a new chapter in galactic history had begun. Admiral Krell stood in the war room of Xerilla Prime, staring at holographic displays that showed the humiliating defeat of his subjugation fleet. Around him, the High Council of the Xerillian Empire argued in panicked voices, their usual confidence shattered by reports of impossible human technology. "Mobilize the entire First Fleet," Krell announced, silencing the room. 300 ships, including our most advanced dreadnoughts. We will bring half our total military strength to bear against these humans. High Counselor Vexnar raised forearms in alarm. Admiral, surely that is excessive for one small species. They have only 30 ships. Those 30 ships just defeated 50 of our best cruisers without taking a single casualty. Krell replied grimly. The humans are using technology that defies our understanding of physics. We cannot afford to underestimate them again. The massive war fleet began assembling within hours. Ships that normally protected the Empire's core worlds were recalled to join the assault. The dreadnought Eternal Dominion served as Krell's flagship, a vessel so large it generated its own gravitational field. At 25 kilometers long, it carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. 2 weeks later, the human detection systems picked up the approaching armada. Captain Ben Foster stood on the bridge of his ship Defender, studying the sensor readings with quiet amazement. 12 ships to face 300, said his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. They're really serious about us. Foster nodded thoughtfully. He was a veteran pilot who had helped develop humanity's dimensional warfare techniques. Unlike the first battle, this engagement would be fought near Jupiter, far from Earth, to prevent any possibility of stray weapons fire reaching populated worlds. Sarah, they brought their biggest ships this time. That flagship reads as 25 kilometers long. They're trying to solve the problem with overwhelming firepower. Will it work? Not even close. They still don't understand what they're dealing with. On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the tactical displays with General Brooks and Dr. Elena Vasquez. The approaching Xyrillian fleet represented a force capable of conquering entire star systems, all focused on defeating 12 human vessels. They're scared, Carter observed. This is half their total fleet. They're treating us like an existential threat to their empire. They should be scared, Dr. Vasquez replied quietly. What we've developed changes everything, not just warfare, but our entire understanding of consciousness and reality. General Brooks studied the fleet composition. Those dreadnoughts are armed with planet-killer weapons. They're not taking any chances this time. The two fleets met in the space near Jupiter's largest moons. Admiral Krell personally commanded from Eternal Dominion, determined to end the human threat through sheer overwhelming force. His 300 ships formed a massive battle formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers. Begin the attack, Krell ordered. Concentrate all fire on the human vessels. I want them vaporized. The Xyrillian fleet opened fire with weapons that could crack continents. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and antimatter torpedoes filled space, with enough energy to power entire civilizations. The combined firepower should have turned the human ships into expanding clouds of plasma. Instead, something far more disturbing happened. The human ships didn't dodge or hide. They simply weren't affected by the weapons' fire at all. Energy beams passed through them harmlessly. Explosions occurred around them without causing damage, and the humans continued flying in perfect formation as if nothing had happened. Sir, sensors showed direct hits on all targets, but no damage. Readings, reported Krell's weapons officer, his voice shaking with confusion. Impossible. Triple-check our targeting systems. All systems are functioning normally, Admiral. The weapons are hitting the human ships, but the ships aren't reacting. It's as if they exist in a different layer of reality. Captain Foster watched the massive weapons barrage with calm interest. His ship existed partially outside normal spacetime, making conventional weapons completely useless against it. The Xyrillian attacks were hitting the space where his ship appeared to be, but not the dimensional layers where it actually existed. Sarah, begin the response. Target their command systems only. I want their admirals to understand what's happening, not their gunners. The 12 human ships began their counterattack, demonstrating capabilities that went far beyond what they had shown in the first battle. Foster's vessel appeared simultaneously in 3 different locations around the massive Xyrillian flagship. Each image was real, each was solid, and each could act independently. On the Eternal Dominion, chaos spread across the bridge as officers tried to understand how one enemy ship could exist in multiple places at the same time. Their sensors showed 3 identical human vessels, each one registering as completely real and solid. Admiral, the human ship is in 3 places at once, reported the sensor officer. Our computers can't process the readings. They're showing impossible data. Before Krell could respond, all 3 images of the human ship fired precisely targeted beams. The weapon somehow passed through the dreadnought's shields, through its armor, and struck the command computers with surgical accuracy. The ship's main computer systems shut down instantly, leaving the massive vessel drifting helplessly. Similar events occurred throughout the Xyrillian fleet as the human ships demonstrated mastery over forces the aliens couldn't even name. Ships found their own weapons turning against them, controlled by some invisible force. Computer systems rewrote themselves, displaying messages in perfect Xyrillian script that read, "Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and avoid further damage." Dr. Marcus Webb, humanity's chief dimensional engineer, stood on the bridge of Foster's ship, monitoring the quantum consciousness interface that made their impossible tactics possible. "Captain, the system is stable across all probability matrices. We're successfully existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously." "How are the Xyrillians handling it?" Foster asked. "Their computer systems are completely overwhelmed. They're trying to process sensor data that violates their basic understanding of physics. Some of their ships are shutting down automatically to prevent system overloads." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted only 20 minutes. 300 of the most advanced warships in galactic history found themselves completely helpless against 12 human vessels that seemed to operate by different laws of physics entirely. Admiral Krell stood on his darkened bridge, surrounded by the ruins of his command systems. His greatest fleet had been neutralized without the humans even seeming to try very hard. Worse, not a single Xyrillian had been killed. The humans had struck with impossible precision, targeting only mechanical systems while carefully preserving every life. "Open an emergency channel to Xyrilla Prime," he ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. When the communication connected, the image of the High Council appeared on his emergency screen. The counselors looked expectant, waiting for news of victory over the primitive humans. "Report, Admiral," demanded High Counselor Vexnar. "Have the humans been defeated?" Krell took a deep breath before delivering the words that would shake the Empire to its foundations. "The entire First Fleet has been neutralized, 300 ships disabled without inflicting a single casualty on the enemy. The humans are using technology so advanced it might as well be magic. They exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Their weapons ignore our defenses completely, and they can control our own systems against us." The silence on Xyrilla Prime stretched for long moments before the High Counselor spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "What are your recommendations, Admiral?" "Immediate withdrawal of all forces, complete cessation of hostile action against the humans, and prepare the Empire for the possibility that our 3-century reign of galactic dominance is over." As Krell spoke these words, similar conversations were happening on ships throughout the defeated fleet. The Xyrillian Empire had encountered something beyond their comprehension, something that made their greatest weapons look like primitive tools. The humans had demonstrated not just superior technology, but a completely different understanding of reality itself. And they had done it while showing mercy to their enemies, proving that their power came not from aggression, but from knowledge that transcended conventional warfare. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 weeks after the great defeat at Jupiter, the Xyrillian Empire was crumbling from within. News of their impossible loss to the humans had spread across the galaxy faster than their fastest ships. On world after world, species that had lived under Xyrillian rule for centuries began declaring independence. Admiral Krell sat in his quarters on Xyrilla Prime, staring at reports of rebellion from every corner of the Empire. The Altarians had driven out their Xyrillian governors. The Centauri colonies had formed their own defense fleets. Even species that had been conquered so long ago they barely remembered freedom were rising up against their masters. A soft chime announced a visitor. High Counselor Vexnar entered, his forearms hanging limply at his sides in defeat. "Admiral, we have received a communication from the humans. They request a meeting to discuss terms." Krell looked up with tired yellow eyes. "Terms of surrender, you mean?" "No, Admiral. They call it a diplomatic conference. They want to establish what they call peaceful relations." 3 days later, Admiral Lisa Carter arrived at Zarela Prime, aboard the human diplomatic vessel Harmony. The ship was small by galactic standards, only 300 meters long, but its very presence in the heart of the Empire demonstrated humanity's complete mastery over Zyrilian space. Carter was accompanied by Ambassador Kelly Morgan, a tall woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes who had spent her career mediating disputes between Earth's nations. Now she would attempt something far more challenging, creating peace between species that had never known anything but conquest and submission. The meeting took place in the Great Hall of Zarela Prime, a massive chamber that had witnessed 3 centuries of imperial expansion. Admiral Krell sat across from the human delegation, flanked by the surviving members of the High Council. The Zarilians looked defeated, their usual arrogance replaced by fearful respect. Admiral Krell, Carter, began, her voice calm and respectful. We're here to offer you something your empire has never given to others, a choice. What kind of choice? Krell asked suspiciously. Ambassador Morgan leaned forward. You can continue trying to rule through force and watch your empire collapse as every subject species rebels. Or you can join us in building something new, a galactic confederation based on cooperation rather than conquest. Why would you offer us anything? High Counselor Vexnar demanded. We attacked you. We tried to enslave your species. By galactic law, you have the right to destroy us completely. Carter smiled slightly. Because we're not interested in ruling an empire. We're interested in exploring the universe and learning from other species. That includes learning from the Zyrilians. The negotiations continued for days. The humans proposed the dissolution of the Zyrilian Empire and the creation of a new galactic confederation. Every species would govern itself, with disputes settled through negotiation rather than warfare. The Zyrilians would keep their homeworlds but give up all conquered territories. In return, humanity offered something unprecedented. They would share their dimensional technology with species that joined the Confederation. Not the weapons applications, but the peaceful uses that could revolutionize space travel, communication, and scientific research. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked with Zyrilian scientists to explain the basic principles of quantum consciousness interface technology. She stood in a laboratory that had once developed weapons for the Empire, now converted to peaceful research. The key insight, she explained to a group of fascinated alien researchers, is that consciousness itself can interface directly with quantum mechanics. Your thoughts can influence reality at the smallest scales, which creates effects that seem impossible to conventional physics. Dr. Thex Kor, the Empire's former chief weapons designer, studied the human equipment with amazement. This suggests that the barrier between mind and matter is far thinner than we believed. Exactly. But the technology can't simply be copied. It requires a fundamental change in how your species thinks about the relationship between consciousness and the physical world. Meanwhile, Commodore Amy Rodriguez led the establishment of humanity's first interstellar naval bases. But these weren't military installations designed for conquest. They were safe havens for refugee species fleeing the chaos of the Empire's collapse, and training centers where humans taught defensive applications of dimensional technology to their new allies. Captain Jake Morrison, whose first contact had started the entire chain of events, now commanded the Joint Human-Alien Research Station, Deep Space One. The facility orbited a neutral star system, where scientists from dozens of species worked together to explore the implications of consciousness-based technology. Captain, reported his science officer, Dr. Lisa Park, the Zyrilian team has made a breakthrough in quantum dimensional communication. They've managed to send messages instantaneously across galactic distances. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. That's the difference between using technology for war and using it for discovery. When species work together, they achieve things no one could accomplish alone. On Earth, Admiral Carter watched reports streaming in from across the galaxy. The collapse of the Zyrilian Empire had created chaos, but also opportunity. Species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to cooperate. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Empire were now open to everyone. Scientific knowledge that had been hoarded by the Zyrilians was being shared freely. General Brooks joined her in the command center, carrying the latest intelligence reports. Lisa, we're receiving membership applications for the Confederation from over 200 species. Everyone wants to join the alliance that defeated the Empire. More importantly, they want access to the technology that makes dimensional travel possible, Carter replied. But they're learning that the technology comes with responsibilities. You can't use consciousness-based systems for aggression without damaging your own mind in the process. Admiral Krell, stripped of his military rank but not executed as he would have done to defeated enemies, now served as an advisor to the new Zerillian government. He worked closely with Ambassador Morgan to help his people transition from an imperial mindset to one of cooperation. Ambassador, he said during one of their regular meetings, I must ask you something that has puzzled me since our first defeat. Why did your people show mercy to my forces? We came to conquer your worlds and enslave your species. Morgan considered the question carefully. Admiral, we learned long ago that hatred and revenge only create more enemies. We defeated your empire, not because we wanted to rule the galaxy, but because we wanted to be free to explore it. The best way to ensure our freedom was to help others find theirs. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy looked completely different. The Zerillian Empire was gone, replaced by the Galactic Confederation that included over 300 species. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Scientific expeditions launched to explore regions of space that had been forbidden under Imperial rule. Captain Ben Foster, now commanding the exploration vessel. New Horizons led joint missions to investigate the strange phenomena at the galaxy's edge. His crew included humans, former Zerillians, and representatives from a dozen other species, all working together to push the boundaries of known science. Captain, reported his quantum engineer, Dr. Sarah Kim, we're detecting dimensional anomalies near the galactic core. The readings suggest there might be other forms of consciousness-based technology out there. Foster smiled at the implications. Then we'd better go find out. The universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any of us imagined. The Galactic Empire's panic had been justified. Humans truly didn't possess ships like anything in their database. But more than that, humanity had possessed something far more revolutionary, the wisdom to use unprecedented power for creation rather than destruction. The age of galactic empire was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun, and the universe itself seemed to be opening new possibilities for species brave enough to explore them together. The stars that had once been divided by conquest were now united by curiosity, and the greatest discoveries still lay ahead.